Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Built in Colorado series because it's so rad. But with me on the line is an amazing founder doing something that I think is not only close to my heart because I'm also an addict and in recovery. Is Dave Gandini. He is the CEO of an amazing startup called SOBRsafe. So, Dave, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you very much. We appreciate your interest and look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise. So Dave, obviously you're not the founder, but you are today the CEO, as we were chatting just before we went live. But why don't you fill our viewers and listeners in from around the world on a bit about your background? Obviously, I know you're from Detroit, for instance, and then maybe give us the elevator pitch about SoberSafe and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, my background for the past 30 or 35 years have been really involved in startup companies, mostly around technology, specifically fiber and software. And I was taking a break over the last few years, and I started to raise some money for a company called First Capital Ventures. And First Capital Ventures happened to have a company that they were talking to by the name of I can't remember the name of the company. Justin, what was the name of the company back then in the old days? Anyway, they were talking to this company in California that had developed or partially developed a technology. And it seemed to be pretty interesting because it was alcohol detection, but not necessarily built for the what I'll call the preventative space, Matt, where DUIs or police pulling people over, things like that. And so we invested some money in that technology in that company, and we did some vetting, and we found out there was some pretty interesting opportunity there. So we ended up acquiring the company about 3 years ago, renamed it SoberSafe, and then from that point in time, we've been working on developing the technology and adding to it and enhancing it. And kind of the overall pitch right now with the company is we've got two technologies. One is a stationary device. You place your hand on it, and it's like a larger mouse, if you will, in terms of ergonomics, and it reads your biometric identity. And then on your second finger, there's a small little portal with our secret sauce and our technology where we could determine whether or not there's alcohol in your system. And how we do that is through sweat that comes from, or humidity that comes from your fingertips. And if you've been drinking, there's ethanol in that humidity and it triggers a signal. So we're a preventative device there. We've also taken the technology and we parked it into a smaller a piece in a band. And so this month we're issuing or releasing the commercial technology where we'll have an alcohol ban. And it's primarily around right now last mile fleet rehabilitation and a little bit of a probation space. Again, not replacing the companies that are out there in punitive space, but kind of augmenting. So that's kind of where we're at today. We raised a bunch of money, went public, uplisted in May, and we've raised some additional capital since then. So we're fully capitalized, hiring Salesforce, building the company as we go. We've got customers signed, and we're moving the business forward. So we're in traction right now.
Amazing stuff. One of the things Justin informed me of was just how much damage or cost is manifested due to alcoholism. And the number was like $249 billion in damage or cost every single year. Um, can you explain how that is such a huge number? Because it's like, the social culture, it's like you mentioned the word, this like culture of accountability, if you like. And I'm curious to get your view, Dave, like why is it such a huge issue?
Well, that's a great question, but we probably would want to start off by giving your viewers a little bit better understanding on how those numbers add up. So if you think about it this way, first of all, let's take the workplace environment. About 47% of all workplace accidents, whether it's inside a company facility or on the road, involve alcohol. So think about 47% of all injuries. So where do injuries go to? They go to claims. Where do claims go to? Go to the insurance companies, right? And so we all of us experience, 10 to 15 to 20% increase in our insurance costs on an annual basis, whether it's personal or business. And so that all that money adds up. Second, about 13% of all company vehicles on the road with you and I and our families and our wives and children, about 13%, the drivers have alcohol in their system. And that's just based on drivers that have been pulled over, accident, but based on data that's available. So we've got to know it's more significant than that. So if you take those two pieces, and then if you take rehab and start stacking it up, let's look at the rehab stats. 70% of all individuals that go into rehab in the first year go back within 12 months. Over 4 years, 90% of the individuals. It's a horrible statistic, right? But it's a tough habit. It's a tough situation to be in and to kick. So if you take all that, and then there's some involved with alcohol, you're also stacking drugs on top of that, right? It's not just alcohol. There's a stack there. So if you take all the dollars that are being spent, let's just take a simple, a 30-day stay in a facility is anywhere between 30 to 50 grand. And you're repeating that in the first year. So the numbers, I mean, how they add is based on some of these statistics and these percentages that I've given you, up to $249 billion a year. And there's mental health in there as well. But it's a probably about a 9 or 10 item list to get you to that number, but it just keeps happening over and over. And what do, right? I mean, we put the individuals back in for a month, they go dry and they come out. So what we're seeing, and I'm going to go a little bit off the road, Matt, but what we're seeing is we just signed a deal with a company. Can I mention the company name on this podcast?
Yeah, it's your show.
Yeah, so we just signed a deal with a company called North Star Care. They're in Seattle, and they're acquiring bands from us. But here's the difference, Matt. What they're doing is they're bringing individuals into their programs and they won't stop drinking. They'll make them quit drinking in the first day or whatever it might be. They work on them psychologically, and they go through process. They have health care professionals, they got telehealth, and they work through a process where they wean them. They don't just completely go through a period where they're dry and they try to move forward from there. And so far, short term, it's very short term statistics, but they're well over 90% in individuals that are successful in the first year. And you're seeing, Matt, these independent companies pop up, and insurance companies are starting to care about the costs, and they're not renewing insurance for some of these individuals that have been in two or three times. So there's this whole little groundswell of activity now with these other companies developing alternative treatments and care for alcoholism. So we tied into that as well.
Mm-hmm. Just maybe to double click on one of the stats you shared, like 13% of truck drivers, if you see a truck like times 100, like 13 of those guys actually have alcohol in their system. That for me is a pretty frightening number.
It is. And it's only drinking has increased, and everything has increased around the last couple of years with COVID. And so another reason why our device is playing in a little bit more significantly is because if you're going to breathalyzer today versus putting your fingers on a device versus wearing something, I mean, you're not blowing breath on people and through people and around people. And as you mentioned, you've got that tube. You're not using that. You're not having to discard that tube and go through those processes. So there's a lot of reasons why we're starting to gain traction and notice in areas. But at the end of the day, we're trying to help the situation, and we're trying to improve that 47%, improve the 13%, improve recidivism. But we've got these partners, and we're working through these channels as we go to try to improve it and make the environment safer and save lives. That's our strategy, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And Dave, who's responsible for this problem? I mean, I'm curious about that, isn't it? Because you would say, oh no, it's the individual, but no, but hang on, if you're a fleet, if you have a fleet of trucks and you employ 1,000 truck drivers, whose responsibility is it to ensure that communities are not put at risk because of substances, like alcohol? And we're being quite narrow today. I mean, you and I know, and at least I'm hearing, it's like, Florida have now decriminalized marijuana. So you can, in the near future, you could go fill up your truck with petrol or diesel or what have you, and then go and get a gram of weed, like
right.
hydroponic, major hardcore stuff, and no one would be there to control you. You know what I mean? And then when you get into the truck, sure. there's no safety system that says scan your finger here to test with it. And then the latest news is you might as well come up with a new business unit soon called SOBRsafe.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. It's crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm on board with you, but the thing is that I mean, it happens right here in Colorado. Forget Florida. I mean, you can purchase and you can put some, as you would say, petrol, as we would say, gas in our vehicles, and they can do that. But we've been asked a lot about the cannabis, the THC, and let's not forget the other issue, which is the painkillers, right? I mean, there's significant issues with opioids, but the alcohol problem is so significant. I mean, we have to maintain our focus there as a company and a business. We're obviously in contact with companies that develop other technologies, and could we integrate those in the future? Yeah, we could do that. But right now, the focus is around really trying to jump in and help in this alcohol area. So that's where we're at today. But in terms of your original question, who's responsible? I mean, businesses, and I'm not trying to poke any holes in these companies and these leaders and what they're doing, but every company has a zero tolerance policy. I mean, some fluctuate slightly from that, but it's a responsibility of the management team and the owner of the company, right? And what they do is what you mentioned with long haul trucks. There's DOT has compliance testing, but it's 1 out of every X people, and it's over a certain amount of time on the road. And I think if you go and do the math on that, they have like less than a 2% chance of ever catching any drivers drinking, because they can time their drinking in between routes and number of hours, and they can escape that. So there is a policy, but I mean, there wouldn't be accidents if that policy was working. And of course, that's not under our control. But what we're finding is one of the kind of the interesting hooks to what we're doing is if a company can save money on their insurance and their liability because they can prove to the insurers that they're safer, they're more likely to want to engage. And otherwise, because we're disruptive, Matt, we're in the early adopter phase of the technology, even though, I mean, you said it's a great product. I can't tell you, if I had $1, if everybody said we had a great product, we probably have a great year this year in revenue. But the point is that the product's disruptive, the technology is, and we're still in the early adopter phase. So that's where we're at. But back to my thought about the insurance, we're also working with insurance companies, and one of them local here. We've worked with one of the largest workers' comp firms, Pinnacle, beginning of the year, and they really like what we're doing, and we've done some testing with them. But if we can combine it with reducing liability for companies, reducing cost because of those liabilities with insurers, I think that's kind of a better way for us, and that's our thinking of how we get in and make more of a statement in that space and save more lives.
Mm-hmm. So, Dave, what have you actually built? Because I've been sharing your website and playing some of the videos and stuff. So if you guys are catching the audio only version, head on over to the YouTube channel to catch what's going on there. But so what have you actually built? Because like I was quite interested in the example shown you walking into a building, you actually have to scan your fingers. It's almost like when
Yes.
you put your security card and scan your fingers. Like, I think if you did something like that in the UK, you would make an absolute killing because,
This is really funny that you said that, because I just got a text. Call me as soon as you can. One of my clients with a last mile delivery business in the UK loves your technology and they want to talk to you immediately.
Yeah, well, there you
Right
go.
there
I
in the
mean,
UK.
it's such a huge, because I used to do that, back then. I lived in London for, like seven years or so. And that was the thing that you did. Like you would go to the pub for lunch and then you would smash a
Right.
couple of wife beaters or Stella Artois. And then you would come back to the office like inebriated, you wouldn't work, it's actually over and above the liability to the employer. It's actually a cost of productivity too, isn't it?
Sure. So back to your question, what we've developed is we've got a biometric sensor, and which is off the shelf. We've combined that with our sensor and our IP and our the secret to our technology is reading that signal from the alcohol sensor and applying our algorithm to that and doing the math and coming back and be able to report back on whether or not there's a presence or absence of alcohol. And we do that in less than 10 seconds. and that's how the device works. And we have a significant patent strategy around it. We've got significant IP around it, and we continue to add to that and further develop it to stay ahead of the potential competitors. Of right now, the only competitors we have today are the breathalyzers. So breathalyzers are a couple minutes to do what you do, and they're not as hygienic as ours. But again, it's all about a biometric fingerprint, a sensor, IP, and an algorithm that's stored in the cloud that reports back on a real-time basis the information that it receives from your two fingers.
So I want to change gears for a moment. Well, you mentioned that you're fully capitalized, and so you've actually raised money in what one could easily say is a very challenging environment or under very challenging conditions. You raised over $20 million in those conditions. What was your experience doing it? Like, did you find it harder than you expected? Was it easier than you expected?
Yeah, well, so for other business owners and individuals, interested individuals in your podcast, it didn't. We had no expectation that would be raising money as late as May of this year, and so we thought we were going out in the first quarter, and we had some issues with the banks that we were working with, and we were trying to get traction and get on the same, have equal footing with our partners. And so what happened during that process is we ended up making some adjustments, and we found a different or a new partner to raise money for us. And that period was drastically shortened. I think it took us about 3 weeks to raise money. Started at the very end of April. I think we were finished by May 8th. Money in the bank on May 20th. So it was a very, very tough market. But I think what got us there, of course, patience, perseverance. But we have a great product, and everyone understands. The investment group understands, and our investors at that time understood that this product applies across so many different markets and be so significant in changing the culture in business and in the roadways that we were going to get a shot to go out and make it happen. So it was difficult, but I think the product got us through, and we also ended up with some really good banking partners that helped us in tough times. And then how we got the second tranche of money was based on our message going viral, because we've got significant digital and investor relations investments. Because today, when you build a business and you're small and unknown, you have to constantly get eyeballs on your business, and there are a number of ways to do that. We were successful in how we built that strategy, and we had about an 8-week period where our stock was really performing. We were trading significantly, and we were able to raise some additional capital during that period. So it was very helpful. But it was difficult. But I think if you have the right partners and the right product in any market, you're going to be able to raise money. And if you have something that the investors don't feel you'll get a shot to make it work, then in tough times you're not going to get the money. So we were fortunate. We worked hard, and we feel real good about our position right now.
Fantastic. What is an uplisting? I'm curious about this because I'm curious for my audience to understand what you know about uplisting, because it's quite an interesting way to fund a startup, a company or a startup such as SOBRsafe or any startup really. I mean, there's obviously public and private markets that you can use. I've had guys on the show many guys who've listed on the NASDAQ. I've had people doing reverse mergers. I've had guys doing angels. I've had guys doing crowdfunding. I've had private equity guys. I've had pretty much all of them. You're the first one that's done an uplisting. So,
oh wow,
I know.
You should feel privileged.
I know, right? That's why I want to talk about it. What is it? Like, walk us through why you chose to do it that way.
Yeah, well, the hardest part of anything and everything we did, and questions you had just asked me, was uplisting a company from the QB. We were public, from the QB to NASDAQ with no revenue. I mean, that was like if you would have asked me today, if you would ask me to do something like that and you were going to give me a bunch of money, I'd say, not going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But what it is, when we took the company out, we had some aspirations of doing some different kinds of funding. Reg A came up as one of the potentials. I'm sure you've had guys that have done that. So the company was originally, and by the way, the company was TransBiotech. It just finally came to my mind here. So TransBiotech, when we acquired them, they were a penny stock. They're in the pinks. We uplisted to get some credibility as we were raising money in the next rounds. So we uplisted to the QB. We had to go through FINRA and go through a number of different audits and things. Then once we knew that where we wanted to go and the money that we needed to raise, we didn't think that a Reg A was the proper vehicle. We were concerned that we couldn't raise enough money. So uplisting from one market, the QB, uplisting to another public market, the NASDAQ. We could have uplisted to the New York, but it's just changing your listing from one public entity to another. So we already had a public company. We're already reporting. We had reported for 2.5 years financials, and we were familiar with the SEC and all the rules and regulations. So an uplisting just took us from one public exchange to another.
Right, fantastic. Is the trigger for doing an uplisting because you already were trading publicly with is that like why would you choose that versus say, because you didn't, you could have not done, you could have gone another direction, couldn't you? So I'm curious to maybe strategically, when does a founder or entrepreneur say, hey, I want to do an uplisting?
Well, I mean, if you look at in this particular case for us, there's very little trading. We had very little trading in our stock. I'm talking like hundreds of shares per day, and we put no news out on the company intentionally because we knew we were going to make the next move. But the primary decision for us to do what we did was based on raising enough capital to get the business across the line. I mean, we had raised up to that point, I think about $7.5 million, and we couldn't continue to go hand to mouth with $2 to $3 million raises. So the only way to get a significant chunk of money, we felt, was to uplist the company on NASDAQ. So then we had access to other opportunities like the PIPE that we did when we raised the $6 million. We did that in like 3 hours. We could also raise via an S3 where we put stock in the market. It gives you credibility, Matt, and it gives you numerous options to raise additional capital. So we preferred to get on the NASDAQ sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I learned was that you actually listed on the NASDAQ in the worst week ever.
Oh yeah, no, it was the third worst week since the 2008 crisis. So no, it wasn't the worst. It was the third worst. So we took third place in that area. But yeah, we did, and it was very painful for me for a number of days and weeks, getting calls from many groups of investors and individual investors, and safe to say I was semi-depressed for probably the month of May and early June. So yeah, it was not a lot of fun.
It's a precarious position to be in, isn't it? Because suddenly you have all these investors. It's like, like what's going on with your share price?
Right. What happened? It's like it was a very steep decline, and again, if you look at that, I mean, sure, a lot of CEOs out there that have, and entrepreneurs that have gone, entrepreneurial guys that have gone public and raised money. When you go out and you're a small cap company like we were with no revenue and we had given no guidance, the 425 was just enable us to get out into the market because we had to do a reversal. You had to have a certain valuation, certain price per share. So there was no math to that. There were no comps to that. It just got us out. So we knew that it was going to be difficult until we started to get into traction and start reporting revenue results. But it was just, a bad time period. So we've been able to recover, and then we're going through some issues right now with the shares that have been into the market based on the last raise that we had. But we're gonna have up and down battle until we announce we give revenue guidance, and that'll be the end of the first quarter of next year.
Mm-hmm. And just long term, obviously you're a visionary, and you've been around the block. So, firstly, are you thinking already about a possible exit? And when should a founder start thinking about those sorts of things?
Well, my first answer to your question is founders. If you look at statistics, founders don't. And that's why I say I'm not a founder. I'm a co-founder. Founders don't usually make it through the gauntlet to get the company out. They're usually replaced by business professionals and individuals that have had experience in managing companies. So I'll answer this jokingly as a co-founder. First of all, there's no thought process from the team right now as far as an exit. Our thought process right now is to make or beat our objectives for 2023 and continue to sign customers and build the business. It's too early on. We think we have some significant opportunities, and we're talking to some significant federal agencies about things, but it's way too early right now. It's deploying capital and building the business. So we're thinking, we will do. So I'll give you a different answer. We are talking to some larger entities outside of our footprint about licensing and about distribution. If you've read some of our press releases, we've signed 6 distributors right now. And I think in the next month or so, we'll start to see fruit from those distributors. They're signing customers of their own because they have a warm customer base. But the next step, the 2 next steps for us outside building the business will be licensing and then maybe adding distribution outside the footprint. I mean, you talk, there's groups in the UK and Ireland, and, we've had other conversations, but that would be the next logical step to really jettison the product into different market segments and grow the revenue quicker. So that's really where our focus is right now.
Fantastic. So, Dave, if you were to think about all the mistakes or failures that you've had along the way, obviously there's many in everyone's journey. What would you point to as, say, being the from your experience at least, what's the greatest failure, quote unquote, that you've experienced on this journey, or maybe even in your entrepreneurial career, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, in terms of failure, I guess we could use a broad term of failure, because no executive, their ego, we don't like to say that word, right? But I think I think this is the case for me in my career, and I think a lot of executives that are listening in, or a lot of your listeners would say, if you have significant instincts and you follow your instincts, sometimes it's somewhat frightening. But if you have instincts and they've always really proved right for you, you got to stick with them. And I think allowing in this journey, allowing individuals, significant, let's say, shareholders, big investor, people that are involved emotionally and financially. Everybody's trying to take you down a different road, right, for what may or may not be beneficial to them. And it's just sticking with your instincts. And we've taken some left turns and some right turns where today I would say we shouldn't have taken those. But I think, you've got to learn as you go through the process. For example, I wouldn't even have thought about doing a Reg A, and I wouldn't have wasted 6 months, to uplist. I would have gone right from Pinks to NASDAQ, but it's easy to say from what I've learned. But it is really sticking with your instincts and not being over influenced, gathering information, but not allowing yourself to be over influenced. If you're the guy, you got to you fall on the sword. It's your decision. So just really spending more time in the future, getting information and getting insight, but still reacting based on my instincts. And of course my team, which is very important too. I rely on the top 3 or 4 guys on my team, to gut check things that we're doing as well. It's not just one guy that runs a company. I mean, you've got to rely on, you're the quarterback, you make the call at the end of the day, but you still got to rely on your players. So it's all of those things.
Yeah, it's a really important point that you're touching on, I believe, because I think, especially in the software startup, lean, Eric Ries, Steve Blank space, it's like, speak to your customers. and then invalidate assumptions. So you get out the building and you get to like MVP faster, and you build some like product that people actually give a shit about. And I don't know, like in my experience, I'm kind of like sitting on your side of the camp. Like I know that there's a space there, right, for that fire. But I think what even then, when you're trying to figure out like what it is that is the right decision to make, because it's really about decisions. Do I build that or build that? Do I go here or do I go there? Do I fund like this or do I fund like this? Or do I hire this person? So it really comes down to decision making. So it's your ultimate power. And so I think if you take too much opinion, you start to lose your own. Right. And so like the value is actually in deciding and taking an action and learning from, and maybe you win. Like, Elon Musk said, I'd rather learn from success than from failure. And one of the things that I wrote about in my book was this idea of like triangulation. So I don't believe you need 300 opinions to make a decision. You need maybe 3 people. And so this is where this triangulation idea comes from. So I'd love to share it with you, Dave, and maybe you can tell me what you think. But the idea is like you're thinking X. I need to make this decision, but you're not sure. So you seek the counsel of 3 people that you trust. So it can be someone on your team, a board member, and just a mentor, or your wife, or husband, or what have you, or your best friend. But the idea is you go to them and you say, hey, I'm thinking X. And then you get them to invalidate whether X is, in their opinion, right. And you're looking to triangulate the general consensus faster so that you just make the decision. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like insurance, isn't it? It's decision-making insurance is the way that I would describe it. But it isn't about 300 people.
Agreed. So my comments on, triangulation is definitely key. And I think I do a little bit of that inside and outside the company, but there's one change that I would make to your theory, is that I don't think you necessarily go to like-minded people because, it's my old strategy or my thinking is if I'm gonna relate this to baseball. If I'm going to hire a management team, I need a third baseman, a shortstop, a second baseman, a first. I don't want a first baseman playing third. He's not played third before. He can't do it. So what I tend to do is I've got a confidant on the board that's got a significant legal background and entertainment background. I've got a confidant inside the company here, my CFO. I've got a confidant in Justin Davis that works with me on the IR side. And then I've got one more individual on the outside, and we're all think differently. So I'll explain my strategy and get input. And I think what happens is the strategy doesn't necessarily change significantly, but maybe it gets molded or sanded down or modified slightly, and it becomes a better strategy than just my strategy. But going to like-minded people, they're just going to agree with you. I want to go to people that won't agree, that don't want to, or won't necessarily think they have to agree with me. So that's the only change. Triangulation, but not with people that are like-minded, because everybody will agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one's going to tell you suck to your face.
Great idea, man. Yeah, I do that too. Oh, gee, that's not going to be, right. Well, no, people have told me that, and I've told other people they suck to their face. I mean, it's, so,
just not
well, the thing is that I grew up an athlete, and I played Division I hockey, and I made it through my neighborhood and out of my neighborhood because of sports. And so to me, everybody's as good as their last game, and it's about learning how to lose and pick yourself up, because you don't win every game. And so I'm fine with I keep score with myself and what I do and how I do it, and I do the same. I treat my guys on my team. I'm a coach, is what I do, and I have to influence these guys and kick them in the butt all differently to get them going. So to me, I want everybody. I think we have a very open group where they think something is a mistake or a bad idea, they'll say it, which is great environment to be in.
So I want to have a bit of fun with you, Dave, for a moment. So I'd love to give you the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine. And if you could go back to yourself on day one of SOBRsafe, before it was SOBRsafe, or whatever day one was for you, and if you think about all the things you've learned, succeeded at, failed at, etc., what advice would you give yourself on day one?
Boy, I'm going through the Matt Brown. Is it like the hot tub time machine kind of a thing? Is it similar? The
Yeah,
movie?
yeah. It's what
Okay,
was the
so
movie?
hot
Someone
tub time machine.
was it like
That's
Bill
what
and
I
Bob? Something Bob, Dave and Bob, Bill and Bob's Excellent
yeah, Ted and somebody's
Ted and
excellent
yeah,
adventure. Bill and
Adventure.
Ted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll try to put myself in that frame of mind. Boy, you know, at that point in time, we thought we had something that worked. We didn't know any different. We were kind of focused on a market. Um, uh, you know, boy, that's a hard question, Matt. At that point in time, I think I did everything the right way because I eliminated the whole staff that was working for the company at that point, brought in my own president and CEO friend of mine, and we started to rebuild. So that's probably too soon, really. Where at the end of the first year is where we talked about, going from the penny to the QB. I would have really thought about the Reg A, the time spent in the Reg A, the money spent in the Reg A, and how that would affect the business. Because at the time the markets were hot, and we could have raised a lot of money in a very quick a period of time back then. So I think the mistake that I made and what I would do differently is I would have taken the path of the Reg A. I would have went right for the NASDAQ and found the necessary group of banks that I needed and built and also would have probably been much more money at that point in time we could have raised. So the mistake was at the fork in the road. I should have took NASDAQ and not Reg A because I ended up spending 4 to 6 months wasting time on that. So
Mm,
it would really be in start of year 2 where I would have to have that conversation with myself.
yeah. Um, Dave, if you weren't doing what you were doing every day, what would you miss the most?
Uh, I would miss just being involved in solving and creating and the whole opportunity and potential. I mean, I'm driven by potential. Every day I get up and I know there's potential for us to be great. I know there's potential for us to do things. And if I didn't do this, I would miss the potential of the success for the companies and the shareholders, because I think this particular adventure for me is going to be my most significant opportunity. And I think I'm going to leave a mark, on society with this one because of the safety and the prevention. And I think I would miss the fact that I couldn't get to smell the success and be involved in the success of the business when we cross that threshold with customers and revenue and the ability for us to be saviors in some way and make a difference.
Mm. It's interesting, that idea of success, because I've done over 500 interviews, and I was chatting to a billionaire at one stage, and I said to him, "Hey, do you see yourself as successful?" And he was like, "No." And I found that answer, like that idea of like most entrepreneurs, like they don't, it's like this imaginary finish line. It's like, well, when this happens, then we will be successful. But then you get there, and then it's like
Yeah.
there's another line, isn't there? Like it's never quite the finish line, unless it's really
Yeah.
the finish line. The thing dies, or you no longer own it. So, what does success mean to you as a
Yeah.
businessman?
That's a great point. And I think it's, for me, it's like I give myself, probably probably a B right now grade for, I could have done things better and I continue to work on doing that. Um, I guess success is, for me in this particular endeavor, success is seeing this product in the market and saving and improving lives. It's obviously we've got to get to the point where we're making money, but that's a business thing. Success for me is seeing this product globally in the market and being preventative and being successful in helping families and individuals and companies perform better, live better lives, and be more harmonious. I think that's, for me, success. There's also the business pieces as well, but I'm one that doesn't necessarily celebrate steps. To me, they're all steps to get to the end. And I do agree with the billionaire when, successful, I don't know, it always changes, right? If you're driven, if you're truly a type A entrepreneur, I don't know if you ever feel that you get there. But for me, it's about doing the things that I'd mentioned. If we could make a difference, man, that'd be so cool. I wouldn't know if it would be success, but I feel really good about myself.
Mm. I know it's I think things are certainly changing. I think, like, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when entrepreneurship wasn't as a popular idea as it is today, right? Like, it's, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, cool. I don't know, 50 of them or 100 of them. So back then, there was this idea, and maybe it came from the 80s because of, like,
I was there. I was an entrepreneur in the 80s. I can tell you. I was there. Ask me the question. I'll tell you.
I was at school.
Yeah. I was an entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. I know, right? There you go.
I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. I thought I was a broke guy starting a startup company, but they call it entrepreneurs then? Okay, got it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like this idea of, like, you must make money first and then make a difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, wasn't it like, it was like that. It was, that was how it was.
Right. Well, I mean, the technology shift, in the mid 80s with fiber optics, it just opened so many opportunities and doors. It was a whole different market. It was meteoric in terms of the rise in the NASDAQ and everything else. And then we gave it all back in early 2020. But I mean, you can't look for a job because you want to make money. You can't build a company with a group of guys because you want to make money. If that's where you're going first, you're not going to succeed, because that's not the fundamental seed to what you're doing. And I understand everything's different. And, I see it. My children, my younger boys, are all pretty successful business guys, but they want everything to happen, and their first goal is for them. Well, I need to do this because I have to do this. It's about the team, and it's about creating success. It is, I always say, I'm not a big baseball guy. I'm really more of a hockey guy. But if the guy walks in to the clubhouse of the GM and he's hit 2 home runs in the season, he wants to get paid for hitting 50. I mean, that ain't going to happen. The guy that hits 50 is going to get a new contract. Chances are he's going to get paid, right? We got to go out and hit 50 home runs to be successful, and all that follows you. When you mentioned it, I mean, you can sit around and drink, bourbon and dream about being acquired, but it's just a dream. You have to build a successful business first, and everything else then follows you. So we'll get excited about those things in the future. But right now, it's serious, man. It's heads down, working hard, and being serious to get things done. Now we still have some fun, but I mean, this is a serious time for us. We have to step up. We have to work smart. We have to work hard. We have to produce. We have to hit 50 home runs. I'll take 49, but we have to hit 50. That's the way it has to be. And then everything else will happen from there. If you start by saying, I can hit 50, give me my money now, and you hit 6, goodbye. That's the difference. It's you got to go out there and prove yourself and prove your company. So that's where we're at right now.
Awesome. Look, I'd love to ask one more question, then we'll wrap up, Dave. So,
Sure.
Why do you do what you do? Like, when you wake up in the morning, what gets you out of bed?
My wife tells me it's time to get up. Why do I do what I do? I mean, I've asked myself that question, a number of times when things were not going very well. I've always been kind of a problem solver and wanting to do something that's difficult. If there was a group of guys in a room and somebody said, well, this is extremely difficult, does anybody want to try this? And I'd raise my hand. I get up, as I mentioned earlier, I want to make a difference, and I'm motivated, excited by the possibility of what we could do. Every day I got the greatest management team that I've ever had, and engaging with the team and all the things that we're doing, and the sales guys and all the potential that we have. Potential gets me up and gets me excited every day. I love prospect and potential. Just love it.
Amazing. Dave, thank you for being on the show, man. It's been a real privilege getting to know you and getting your story on record. And I really do sincerely wish you all the very best. I hope you guys really hit the numbers and the kind of scale and ultimately the kind of difference that you want to make on a world stage, because I was watching just a cliff note, is that I don't know if you've watched a show on YouTube. He's like a professor of biology, and his fucking name has not escaped me, but he's got this.
You can say the F word. If I know him could have said the F word, I would have been throwing a few by. I didn't know that. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't watch YouTube TV. I watch
Well,
YouTube, but
no, I know it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, so it's not Lex Friedman. Other guys will know. Anyway, cluster. But anyway, so he was basically talking about like the effects of marijuana on like people and unpacking all the the specifics about it. And he was explaining how like what's consumed at the top of the pyramid, like the most consumed drug, and it's after caffeine, it's alcohol. And like we all know someone who's afflicted by it. And
right.
so, this is it's a cause. It's not even a mission. It's a cause that you're going after. So I shared that because I really sincerely wish you and the team all the very best. I hope you guys go out there and do it.
Thank you very much. And maybe you could check back with us in April, and we have all this great news. We could be on the show talking about all our success. Man. So keep in touch with us.
We will do. Thanks so much.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Cheers, guys.
Okay, thanks.